Our questions tonight will be asked by Clayton Hardiman, columnist and editorial page committee member for MLive Muskegon Chronicle, and Steve Klosterman, MLive Muskegon Chronicle's government and election reporter. Now on to our candidates. Here in the 91st District, we have, starting out, Republican Holly Hughes, Independent Alan Yeager, and Democrat incumbent Colleen Lamonte. With a draw of lots prior to tonight's debate, it was determined that Holly will have the first opening statement. Holly?
Good evening, and thank you to MCC and the Muskegon Chronicle for hosting this debate. I'm Holly Hughes. I'm fourth generation Muskegon County resident. My kids are the fifth. And if we're so lucky to have grandchildren, I hope that the sixth generation will live in Muskegon as well. I'm very passionate about Muskegon County. My husband Rick and I are small business owners. We started our business with 7 employees. We've gained employees to 160 after starting with 1 telephone and 1 typewriter, Selectrics. I got a lot done for Muskegon as a legislator. I worked hard and achieved results for jobs, seniors, and education. My first week on the job, I worked with Eagle Alloy to successfully create hundreds of jobs. I founded the Veterans Job Fair, and it's been running for the last 3 years. This year we had 95 businesses looking for veterans to hire. I passed my own bills so that veterans could get jobs here in Muskegon. I fought to keep Meals on Wheels funded because I know that our seniors just need a little help to stay in their homes. And it's cheaper than a nursing home, because let's face it, home is where they want to be. I passed my own legislation into law to protect seniors from being taken advantage of financially from people who raid their bank accounts. As a legislator, I fought for more dollars for education, but the federal government took away education stimulus dollars of $500 million our first year in office. We made education a priority by adding $1 billion and balancing the budget on time and dealing with the $1.5 billion deficit when we first came into office. I passed Muskegon Promise Zone legislation to help students that cannot afford college or vocational education. I'm currently working on with the Muskegon ISD to get more kids in preschool. I'm running for state representative because I want to live in a Muskegon where jobs are abundant, where our children can receive a world-class education, and where we can live and raise our families. I will work hard each and every day to do these things. This is my promise to you. Thank you.
I'm Alan Jaeger, and I really appreciate y'all being here, but I'm kind of nervous. I'm not as much a politician as I am a truck driver. But I'm on the Holton Community Center. I was a Girl Scout leader for like 5 years, and I was also awarded the Girl Scout Leader of the Year for 1 of them years, which is really strange to most people. I'm the owner of Presses, and with that, we do a lot of demolition. We were on Channel 13 last night tearing down a house next door to Wood Street Market. My big beliefs are I'm a big, less government, smaller government, and less regulation, smaller government, and local control. I think that all the regulations are hurting small businesses, they're hurting our workers, and they're hurting our retirees. The problem with me running and becoming a rep is almost all of you will end up hurt. Some of you will gain. But the problem comes in is when you start making cuts and you get this, try to get Lansing back under control, and you cut administration, there is going to be cuts. But this state is broke. It's either that or we come after you for a lot more money. And the only way we're going to solve the problems is cut or tax the heck out of you. And taxing the heck out of you is going to drive everybody out of the state of Michigan. So when you listen to me tonight, it's going to be about less regulation and less taxes. Or at least, I'll change that. It's less regulation, and no, I cannot lower your taxes. No one's going to lower your taxes. We're going to promise this, but we are not going to do it. It never happens. But it will be about less regulations, and we're going to certainly try to hold back any more taxes. Thank you very much.
Colleen? First of all, I want to thank MLive and the Muskegon Chronicle and the editorial board for hosting this opportunity for us. I'm State Representative Colleen Lamonti, and I ran for office 2 years ago because, like so many people in our community, I wanted to have a voice in Lansing who actually understood the challenges that families and seniors out here are actually facing. My family, like so many families in our state, was directly affected by the recession that we had in our state. My husband had lost his job. We lost our home to foreclosure. It took us 1.5 years to get back on our feet. But more importantly, I think I understand what a lot of the families are facing out here. The idea that living paycheck to paycheck, worrying about how you're going to keep and make ends meet, knowing that you're trying to save for college for your kids, these are the issues that people are worried about. These are the ones that they're facing out there. And they are the ones that I am advocating for when I go to Lansing. The problem is that I saw policies that were coming out of Lansing that were not only not helping our families, but they were hurting our families. The senior pension tax that my opponent voted into place, taking away the per-child tax credit, taking away the homestead property tax exemption. This was not only bad policy, but when it took money out of your pocket, it also took money out of our own economy. Because I know that when you had that money, you were going to spend it in our local community. You were going to help out our small businesses and create the demand for those jobs that we actually need here in our state. As a teacher and a mom of 2 school children, I also saw policies that were hurting our kids' education. And that's why I have stood up for making sure that our schools have the resources they need. But more importantly, I have listened to the people here in our community and took time to hear their ideas and act on them in Lansing.
Great. We'll proceed now to the question part of our program. Holly had the first opening statement, so Alan, you're next in line. You'll get the first question. Now, what would be your top legislative priority going into a new term of office?
I only have one priority, and that's regulations. We are regulated to death. My business, we used to have many employees. We cannot have employees because we cannot get through the regulation. There are so many, it's making it so we can't operate. Our schools are not operating. They're all in Muskegon County, are all in the middle of going broke. And it takes so many people to try to run the school, we don't have any teachers left. I went to a board meeting last night. They had 27 kids in a 1st grade class. We have got to get our teachers back into the classrooms and get rid of this administration over there in Lansing. And the only way we're going to do that is cut regulations. Regulations are killing us. There is nothing else. We have to stop making all these laws. It's burying us. Thank you.
Holly?
My priorities would be the same that I have been working on. Making sure that we've got thriving, vibrant schools to have quality education for kids in our state, and to reduce the tax burden that has been placed on the folks that can least afford it, our seniors and our working class families. I've introduced a bill that would at least protect the money that our state has set aside for our kids' education. Right now, there is almost $500 million that's being siphoned out of our school aid fund that does not go to our classrooms. My bill would protect that money, and it would allow us to reinstate over $300 in per pupil funding for every student in our state. These are the things I have been working on, and I will continue to work on as your state representative.
Holly?
Well, it has to be jobs. Like I said in the beginning, I want to make sure that our kids and our grandkids have a job here so they don't have to move to another state to look for a job. That's why I started the Veterans Job Fair. And we started that 3 years ago, went to Dave Ealing, said let's try this. He said he wanted to do it. We did it on the LST. This year we had 95 businesses. We packed out the LST ship downtown Muskegon. We had jobs from engineering on down to grocery clerk and everything in between. We actually had a few Navy SEALs. I think there were 6 of them that went through our job fair. We need to connect our people to the jobs that are out there. I talked to one of our job providers. He said, I have 10 jobs right now if we just could get people to show up. But we also need jobs, vocational education, to make sure that we can fit the needs of what the employers need. Jeff Hansen earlier talked about the welding. We need welders. And actually, welders can make more money than some attorneys. So we need to focus in on that. I also supported the Muskegon Promise Zone legislation that will help kids with their education, college, vocational ed, that kind of thing, to try to make a difference, and working on preschool so that they're successful in school. But it's really interesting to me that my opponent talks about getting rid of, getting all the tax credits back and spending more, which we all would like to do, but hasn't said how she's going to do that. Who's she going to tax? Is it going to be you out there? Or is it going to be reinstating the job-killing business, Michigan business tax with a 22% surcharge? I think we need an answer on that. Thank you.
Alan, you have a chance for a rebuttal.
Yeah, I would love to cut your taxes, but every time taxes get cut, usually it's some big business that just had it cut. And every time, it seems like my business goes further in the hole. And every time retirees lose their homes and lose everything they own because they cannot pay the property taxes or all the taxes that are getting levied on them. My mother-in-law doesn't make a lot of money, and it's hard for her. And so cutting taxes is a great sounding thing, but it always winds up in her lap, or my lap. And this is not acceptable. So I don't believe in cutting taxes. I believe in straightening out the system.
Colleen, rebuttal?
Absolutely. So this is about getting the money back in your pocket. It's about reducing the tax burden that has been placed on you, and it's a matter of priorities. We as a state need to decide whether or not we can continue to tax our seniors and our families and not allow that money to circulate within our own economy. What I would be looking at is how we are paying people over $300,000 a year on state salaries with a 90% increase that allowed them to do that. I don't agree with it. I think if they want Wall Street wages, they need to go to work on Wall Street.
Holly, rebuttal?
I think we made it pretty clear.
All right. What is the top Great Lakes issue that needs to be addressed by the state of Michigan? And Colleen, we'll begin with you this time.
So I'm proud to have received the endorsement of Clean Water Action. I think that we need to make sure that we are protecting the purity of our water here in our state, making sure that we are not contaminating it and having it for future generations. I think also looking at our blue economy and making sure that we've got a trade that can happen through our Great Lakes, and that we are also encouraging job growth through the Great Lakes region with our recreation and our commerce that happens.
Thank you. Holly?
Yes, I think we do need to focus in on jobs. We have one of the world's largest, or this side of the state, we have the only deep water port. We have to work on that barge issue, but we need employers to actually export product right from here in Muskegon County and get the rest of the state on board with that as well. But I will say, my record's clear on the environment. We worked hard and voted for $6 million to help clean up the Zephyr site. It was Senator Hansen's legislation. We passed it in the House. And it's strictly for cleanup, because I know that they use all that money for research. And then this is just strictly for cleanup, which is a huge difference, because I've worked on the Koch chemical site, the Temple of Doom for Hooker Chemical, a lot of Superfund sites, made sure DuPont had a fence up so that people, when they crossed that property, didn't start choking when they were cross-country skiing. And we actually started the White Lake Recyclers and Recycling, and we got a statewide award. We were the only grassroots organization to accomplish that. All the rest were big corporations. So I think we have to work hard. When we did with the White Lake Recyclers, it was business, government, and grassroots. Those are the kinds of things we need to do to make sure that our Great Lakes stay great. Thank you.
Alan?
Yeah, I don't think we ought to be drilling on the Great Lakes. Mostly Michigan has natural gas, and there's so much natural gas in Ohio and Pennsylvania and everything else, we're now exporting it. I don't know that drone on the Great Lakes is a very good idea. Invasive species are definitely going to be a problem, and I don't know how we're going to stop them because people are throwing them in there. They don't even have to swim up these channels. Muskegon has a giant plume, I believe, of benzene or something coming from one of the old automotive industries, and it is really, really big. So stopping these plumes of contaminants from going into the lake would be big for me. But I think the biggest thing that we all ought to be scared of is Arizona and New Mexico and California are out of water. And if we do not have enough senators in our government and reps in our federal government. The rest of them, there's 100 senators, I believe. So that means that there's probably 80 not surrounding our Great Lakes. So that 80 can vote to siphon water out of here and send it to New Mexico or Arizona. This is something we ought to all be scared of because we don't have the power to hold them back because they do what they want whenever they want. We've all figured that out, I hope, by now. So we need to shore up with Canada, with all the states surrounding these lakes to make sure that we protect them and we keep them big because they'll siphon them off. Russia did it, drained the lake. And so if we do not control that water going out of this lake, it's a problem. Thank you.
Colleen, do you care to have me rebuttal? Holly?
No, thanks.
Alan?
I think we all said that.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Next question. What should be the foundation of the state's economic development policies and strategies? That one goes to Holly first.
Well, we need to do what we have been doing. I think we had a great start by eliminating the job-killing Michigan business tax. And also, I know the people voted for the personal property tax. We were the only state that had something like that. We need to be more competitive with Indiana. And we've changed so much regulations. When I first started running for office, we had a situation where Cisco tried to move their plant into Michigan. And they tried for a year. And Indiana came and processed their permits within 24 hours. They moved 35 miles south of where they were going to be in Michigan, and that was 500 Michigan jobs. I think that's the difference that we've made, and I think we need to continue to make that difference. We've shown that we're not going to do deficit spending anymore. When we first got into office, it was $1.5 billion deficit that we had to deal with. Now we are a AAA bond rating. We had the lost decade under Granholm, where we lost 800,000 jobs. We've now gained back 300,000, and Michigan's on the upswing. I think we need to continue in that direction to make sure that we are stable tax situation here so that when businesses come here, they know what to expect. And with Michigan being so strong in that direction, it has made a huge difference with jobs, which is important so our kids can stay here. That's what's important to me, is I want to see grandchildren here. I don't have any yet, but I'm hoping someday I will, and that they'll be able to play on the lakeshore like we did with our kids.
Alan?
Yeah, I go back to regulations, but big businesses do very well with regulations. The Walmarts and all of them of our world have had our government pass laws, so it is very hard for a small business to make it. When you only have 4 or 5 employees, how do you afford the accountants? How do you afford all the lawyers? How do you afford anything? You can't hardly run yourself. I have to work 60, 70 hours a week, and we can't keep up to the paperwork. One little lawyer can cost us our whole business. This is a bad situation. And it's the big corporations that have paid lobbyists to get this stuff put against us. This is why Walmart will be allowed to move into Whitehall. It is hard to compete with Walmart. The other businesses up there will not be able to compete. The small businesses can't afford the lawyers. They cannot afford the accountants. They will drive us out of business. Now, I have no problem with Walmart moving there. I have a problem with Walmart having the power over me. I should be able to compete, and the only way I can compete is to get rid of the regulations.
Colleen?
I think when we look at the states that are doing the best as far as coming out of the recession, Michigan's not one of them. we still have the 5th highest unemployment in the nation. We are still struggling. And when I talk to folks across the county, we've got people that are still living under poverty. That's what we're looking at here. When we look at the states that are actually doing the best, it's not the states that have cut the most business taxes. It's not the states that have cut their budgets and slashed. It's states that have invested in education, that have made sure that their kids are going to be well prepared to compete on a global level for the jobs of the 21st century. It's also states that are investing in their own communities through infrastructure improvements, making sure that they have good roads. We aren't doing that here in Michigan. We've got to change course. And that's why I think that we need to be looking at investing in making sure our roads are getting fixed, that we are investing in our schools to make sure our kids have good education. That's what we need to do. When we create the thriving, vibrant communities that people are looking to move to, that's what draws businesses there. Businesses will follow where the talent goes. And the talent that is coming out of our colleges right now are looking for places to live that offer these things. And we need to be offering that here in Michigan.
Holly, rebuttal?
Yeah, I think we have hope here in Muskegon. When we started the job fair 3 years ago. The number of jobs that were at that job fair, it's changed. When we had 95 businesses sign up and more that wanted to, we actually had to put a tent outside of the ship in order to accommodate. There are a lot of jobs out there where we have to match the talent and put into the training. Use our VOC-Ed, which we've had one of the best VOC educations here in Muskegon and also in Fremont.
Alan?
That's a rebuttal, right? I have a problem that in the Heights and in the city, we're looking at a 20 to maybe 30% unemployment. I don't even know how to put it, but it isn't getting better. It's getting worse. So we need to find a way. This is the unemployment number we better be working on, or we're going to be paying the welfare bills to handle it. Thank you.
Colleen, rebuttal? No?
Right. School education funding is taking center stage in the governor's race. How do you assess the current state support for schools and what should change, if anything? And Alan, we'd like to start with you.
Well, school funding for me is, I get myself in more trouble than I do get out of it. But I say get rid of the Department of Education in Lansing. Now, that's pretty radical. It's probably way off the line. We'll never get rid of all of it, but we certainly need to slow it down. The administration and the people in Lansing are way, way overpaid, and they're making too many laws. Our children are not being taught by our teachers anymore. They're being taught by legislature, by administrators in Lansing. We need our power back in our kids' in our teachers' hands. Our school boards could run these schools a heck of a lot more efficiency if you weren't passing Common Core, if you weren't passing all these things where every child is the same. We keep passing laws thinking we go over there and you send us over there and we pass a law to help Detroit. What do you think that does to Ravenna? Every kid in Ravenna ought to carry a knife with a 4-inch blade. That's because it's a farm school. They shouldn't be getting kicked out for 180 days there. But now I can understand you don't want a 4-inch blade in the Heights. You can't pass one law to fix it all. You de-law. That's what I say, deregulation. When you deregulate, you put Fruitport School back in Fruitport's hand. You put Holton schools back in Holton's hands, and you put the teachers back in charge of their classroom. And you put the school board back in charge of your thing. Then we can, I may be out of time, then we can use the money from the administration to all that administrative over there in them big fancy houses over there in Lansing. We can give that to the schools. And that $100 million the federal government will cut us off, I bet you I save more than that and get rid of all the administration. But they're still going to send you the money. They ain't going to cut you off because they want to get reelected too. So it'll work out.
All right, Colleen.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I know that this has been a huge debate in some of the other statewide elections. You know, what's going on with education funding? For me, I guess maybe as a math teacher, I can kind of break this down a little bit. In 2011, the base per pupil funding was $7,316, okay? In 2012, it went down to $6,846. Ladies and gentlemen, pure math. That was a drop of $470 per pupil, okay? That's the $1 billion. Now, we have put back some of the money in my term, and we are now at $7,126 per pupil, but we are still at a loss of $280 for every student in our state. We're still not there. We need to support our schools. Our children are our most vital resource here, and as far as economic development is concerned, if we are looking to draw jobs here and businesses, we need to offer skilled labor. We need our kids to have that good education so they can go on to college and get a degree and be able to go out and have a good life for themselves because they've got a good job, a good career. That's what it comes down to. When I talk to teachers where they've got 41 students in a classroom, in a creative writing classroom no less, that's 41 papers that they have to read every night. That's a lot of grading to do. There's a lot of things that we are not doing for our kids. When we're sending home classroom lists for our parents to pay for not just the crayons and markers they used to, but now they have to supply reams of copy paper because schools don't have the money for it anymore. You know, there's only one set of textbooks for a classroom and kids don't get to take them home. That's what we're talking about. We need the resources to make sure our kids have a quality education in our state.
Thank you. Holly.
Yes, I think I can explain some of the math on this as well because I lived it. We went, when we were first elected, $1.5 billion deficit. And we wanted to make sure that we tried to plug the hole. We lost $500 million because the federal stimulus was cut off. One year they gave us $600 million, $450 million, and then the year I was there, $500 million was gone. We had to plug that hole. And we tried to help, and we're successful, I think, in trying to help to relieve the burden of 25% of each school's budget going to teacher retirement. Now, we owe that teacher retirement. So they told us we had $64 billion in deficit. Now, remember, around then, we had a $50 million annual budget. So we have a $64 billion deficit, and it was going to go from 25% of school budget to 35%. So we capped it at 20%. The state paid the difference, and they added $20 billion since then for the teacher retirement. So when they retire, they have something to live on. That's helping our seniors. And the problem is more than just per student. And I fought for more dollars per student. I built a coalition of 24 legislators, and we were able to break that off and get more. But the problem is, it's not just per student. It's also the declining enrollment. When you have less students going to school, you times that out. Jeff Hansen was talking about Norton Shores having less students and almost $500,000 or $600,000 shortcut because they didn't get as many students as they thought they'd get. That's a problem. So we do, even though we put an extra $1 billion of state dollars in because we lost that federal money, I still feel, as a former school board member, I would like to see more money for education. But again, we can only do it with more jobs to pay the taxes that help support everything that we need and want. So we need to go back and focus on jobs to help with everything. Thank you.
Alan, would you like to take any time for rebuttal?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Colleen?
Yes, I would. So when we talk about the extra funding that went in, it went into the retirement system to fix a problem that they actually created. Because when you start forcing schools to privatize their workers, there are now less people paying into the retirement system. When we open up the cap on charter schools, which those teachers don't pay into the system, we have created a problem. And that $1 billion went to fix that problem.
Would you like to rebut?
Yeah, I don't think that's totally correct. The $64 billion was under Granholm administration didn't attempt to fill that hole. That's what we inherited along with a $1.5 billion deficit. So for us to lose federal dollars and make it up with state dollars, I think is a good thing. We're trying to make a difference for education, and I'd like to see more. No doubt about it. Thank you.
We're about at the halfway mark of our program tonight. We're going to break it up a little bit by giving each of the candidates a question to ask one of the others a question. And there's no rebuttal after they ask the question. Colleen, you would have the next question, so you give the first opportunity to ask one of the two a question.
Sure. So, being that, we're seeing a lot of issues with women right now, and the idea, I'm a woman, I have a daughter, I worry about what's going on, making sure that they have fair pay for equal work, knowing that they need certain issues that are concerning them. What would be the biggest issue that you think are facing women today, and how have you addressed that? Either one of my opponents, Holly.
Okay. I think it all stems back to a couple of things. I think there should be equal pay for women for equal work, absolutely. And I also think equal education. That's why I focus in on the Muskegon Promise Zone, to try to make a difference for kids who can't afford college, and also work on preschool. All of those things help to not only for women, but also for our guys. We need to make a difference with education and with jobs, and equal pay is part of that.
No. Holly, you're next in line to ask either
Sure.
Alan or Colleen a question.
I think the question's for Colleen, and I kind of asked it in the beginning, is, it'd be great to get rid of to add all these tax credits back and increase spending on different programs and so forth that you've talked about, but explain to me how you're going to do that. Are you going to tax the folks out here? Are you going to go back to having the job-killing MBT tax with a 22% surcharge and making us uncompetitive with Indiana? Just what is the answer to how you plug that hole?
Well, again, as I said before, I think it really comes down to priorities. As a state, we've got to decide, are we going to continue hurting our own economy by taking the money out of your pocket? Or are we going to make sure that we get that money back in your pocket and maybe not pay people that are working for the state over $300,000 a year, giving them a 90% raise? I don't think that's helping. I think if you want Wall Street wages, you need to go work on Wall Street. We also need to look at the idea that, we've got over hundreds of millions of dollars that go to the MEDC. And traditionally, that money is sent out to create jobs. Our own audit by the state showed that less than 10% of those jobs were ever created. Where's the accountability there? So I would say we need to look within our own government. We need to make sure that when we are sending money out through the MEDC, that it's actually producing the jobs that it's supposed to be producing. Otherwise, we get that back, we put that money back in your pocket.
Alan, now you can ask a question.
I'm going to answer one at the same time. I don't think a whole bunch of old men, politicians over in Lansing ought to be deciding reproductive rights of women. The Texas legislature worked for 2 months every other year. There are only 5 states that have a full-time legislature. Michigan is the second highest paid in the nation. With all the laws being passed by Lansing and the feds, we are becoming a part-time workforce. Why doesn't Michigan become a part-time legislature at $20,000 a year with no pension and no health, so politicians and part-time Walmart workers are all on the same page? I wanted both of these so bad. Colleen, I'll go with you.
All right, awesome. Well, I would say that, when you look at how our legislature runs, I'm accountable to you. I am your public servant. And so the things that I do, the decisions that I make me accountable to you because you vote me back into office. When we have a part-time legislature, who ends up being in charge are the bureaucrats in Lansing. We don't need that here in our state. I would much rather have you be in charge of what's going on than to have a bunch of lobbyists making those decisions for bureaucrats in Lansing.
All right. Thank you. I'd like you to turn your attention to Muskegon Heights. How has the experiment on a community charter school there played out? And what have the state and local education leaders learned from that situation with the Muskegon Heights schools? And we'd like to start with you, Holly.
Yes, I remember when this happened, and it's kind of an emotional thing. I went to the Heights when I was a kid. Went to Roosevelt, went to Glendale. And my uncle was a teacher at the Heights. So we care about the Heights. My mom graduated from the Heights. My dad went to the Heights. This is Muskegon pride. We care about our community. And it's heartbreaking when there was a $14 million deficit. And actually, I talked to one of the school officials who said to me, when I was a legislator, took me into her office and said, "It breaks my heart, and it broke my heart too, to see a 5-year-old run into the school with all the enthusiasm a 5-year-old has for kindergarten, and knowing that that child did not have a future." I did not want to hear that from that particular school official. I also, it was interesting when the Muskegon Heights asked for the emergency manager. They truly wanted help to make a difference for our kids. And I think that Mosaica was not the right choice for our Muskegon Heights. I think that it's a better situation now that the ISD has taken over because they understand our people and what we're going through. We have high unemployment in the Heights. The kids need hope, a place to go, a vision that they will have a job and families to look forward to. That's why I put emphasis on the Muskegon Promise Zone. I want to make sure our kids can break that cycle and make a difference in Muskegon. That's my hometown, 4th generation. I'm here for them, and I will never depart from Muskegon Heights. Thank you.
Colleen? I'm sorry. I skipped over Mr. Jaeger. Alan?
Yeah, don't do that.
I won't do that again.
First off, I believe the Heights asked for intervention because they were broke. You know, I've told the story once before. When my 2 kids were born, each time, they were the most important thing that I've ever had in my life. More important than my life, more important than my wife's life, more important than anybody. And it is my obligation to give them every up I can give them, to give them the best chance at the best life they can have. Now, if you have to send your kids to a bad school or something, what choice you have but to go to a better school if you have that belief? Another thing is, this is where regulations are killing us. There are schools out there that want to be more religious. If you want to have your kids in a more religious setting, I say Fremont's more religious setting, then that's where you should have the right to get them there. But when regulations make it so you can't have religion in the school anymore, you pull your kids out to hunt for charter schools. We go looking for charter schools because of the regulations that they put on us that we no longer can send our kids to our schools because we don't think they're teaching them the way we want them taught. We don't want 27 kids in a 1st grade class. So we go to charter schools to get just a better teaching for them. So when people pull their kids out of public schools, it's not necessarily because they want to hurt the teachers or the student, the school board or anybody else. They are thinking like I'm thinking. These 2 children are my life. So I am going to give everything to them 2 children to have a great opportunity in life. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Colleen?
Thank you. Well, I think the one thing that we can see that shows us from what happened in Muskegon Heights is that a for-profit charter model doesn't work. this is not the way that we need to be going in our state, and I don't agree with taking the cap off of charter schools. I actually taught next door in Muskegon Public Schools, and I know that many of the challenges that the Heights were facing were the same challenges that I also faced within my own classroom, within my own school buildings. We've got an upside-down way of funding education in our state. Right now, we send more money for students in the most affluent areas of our state with parents that have the most resources available to them. And we send the least amount of money to the kids that don't have those same resources. We need to take a look at that. This is not the way to be running schools in our state. When we've got kids that are coming to school hungry, when they haven't slept in their own bed in over a week because of situations that are going on at home, we've got kids that are bringing to school a lot more problems with them in some of our most urban areas, and we've got to be addressing these issues. This is a matter of, again, it comes down to priorities. We either value these children and make sure that they get a quality education and set them on a path of being successful citizens, or we will end up paying for them later on, because they're either going to end up on the streets, on welfare, or worse yet, in prison. We've got to make a decision here, folks. This is about making sure that all kids in our state get a quality education to open up their opportunities for being successful.
You like to take time for rebuttal, Holly?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, now this is why local control is so important. You know, when you have local control, you don't need people stepping in, because the community can step up to the occasion. It used to be, you know, we didn't even have these problems 30 years ago. We were funding the schools differently. Then we decided, oh, we have a better way of funding schools. We'll have the state take the schools over, and they'll fund our schools. So now they're all getting rich over there with all their administration over in Lansing, doing great. And what do we get stuck with? Failing schools. So either we put the schools back in local hands where they belong, and these kids will come back, because then we can get back to teaching what us as the parents think they ought to teach.
Colleen? Okay.
Next question. What is your opinion of the emergency financial manager law as it stands? Repeal, reform, or keep as is? This one goes to Alan first.
No, I think you got to keep it as it is. I mean, we keep electing the same people back, like in Detroit. Everyone that bankrupted that city got elected back into that city. What do? Keep sending more money? I mean, we just sent them $300 million, and the first thing they did was their, I think it was their museum or their library system, doubled the raises of the top 2 officials. They went from $500,000 a year to $1 million a year. That helped a lot, and I'm sure that we're all benefit from that one. So I think either you send an emergency manager or let them go completely bankrupt. That's the only choices you have, and we have to try to fix it.
Colleen?
I didn't agree with superseding the will of the voters when they re-implemented the emergency financial manager law. I think when the voters voted it out, it was pretty clear what the state of Michigan wanted. And instead, the legislature decided that that wasn't good enough. And putting a financial manager in does not guarantee that we're not going to have a bankruptcy. That's exactly what happened in Detroit. Now, I think we need to be looking at, again, local control here. This is about allowing a community to have governance over itself. And that's what we need to be supporting.
Holly?
Thank you, Steve. Actually, the Emergency Manager Act has been used by Republican and Democrat governors from Milliken, Engler, Granholm, and now Snyder. What we implemented was extra safeguards to help municipalities and schools if they think they're going in that direction where they can't pay for everything, and catch it earlier. That wasn't like that before. When you've got a city that's going bankrupt and not serving the citizens, and taking, for example, I believe it was Battle Creek, $2 million of the firefighters' retirement and using it for other things and not providing services, there's a problem. We owe it to the people to try to help. Because a stronger Michigan, stronger cities, people are paying their bills and people have confidence in Michigan are going to move here to help us with jobs, expand their companies, etc. So we will always have the emergency manager situation and hope that we don't have to use it. But like I said, every governor, Republican, in the last 4 administrations, starting with Milliken, has had to use it in one shape or form. It's one of our safeguards to keep our state safe. Thank you.
Alan, or rebuttal?
I live in a school district that could very easily be dissolved. We only have 800 students. We're losing students every year. And the truth is, this is the absolute truth. A lot of people ain't gonna want to hear it. The truth is, we could be dissolved very easily. And no one would even say anything. It'd be a good thing, because we're a white school. The fact of the matter is, if you're a Heights and you're a black school, they ain't gonna take it. So everybody, it creates a problem for all of us. And I don't even know how to say it so it doesn't come across racist, but it's what happens. So what do we do? Do we just give them more money? I mean, that can't possibly be the answer.
Colleen, rebuttal?
Well, again, you know, superseding the will of the voters by voting a law that they had just repealed right back into place, I don't think is the answer. And when it comes to making sure that communities actually don't fall into this issue, maybe making sure that we are actually living up to the promise of revenue sharing for our communities needs to be addressed.
Holly, rebuttal?
I think we're clear.
All right. Many people believe that Michigan roads and other infrastructure need immediate attention. How should the state and its localities pay for these improvements? And I would like to start with you, Colleen.
Sure. I actually worked on a bipartisan package of bills when I was in the House of Representatives that actually took a look at road funding and starting on our way to making sure that we had funding out for our roads, increasing the funding by $500 million. We need to make sure that we get more funding out for our roads. But there's a lot of other things that we need to be addressing as well. And there are policy issues here that need to be addressed. Michigan has some of the highest weight restrictions in the Midwest as far as the trucks that are doing the damage to our roads. These are issues that we need to be taking a look at. We need to bring down those weight restrictions. We need to increase the fees when trucks are overweight and doing more damage to our roads, because this is about making sure that the people that are doing the damage are actually paying for the damage that they're doing.
Okay, thank you. Holly?
Yes, I'm very happy that the legislature in the last 12 months has added $870 million to help with roads. We all know that it's not going to be enough. We need to make sure that our roads are in good condition. It's the job of government for infrastructure, and definitely we need to pay attention to that. I do think you have to be careful when you talk about weight limits for trucks and limiting product. You have to be careful with that, because you don't want to have business decide Michigan's not a state you want to come to. I think there's a balance there. But we do need to work to make sure our roads are improved. Thank you.
Transportation, the Department of Transportation, Lansing, another one, gone. We cannot keep putting money into administration over in Lansing and not putting money into our roads. The fact of the matter is, they're living in mansions over there, and we're living on junk. The regulations by them, we do not know what went wrong here. I guarantee you, our parents were building roads. They lasted 20, 30 years. They're just now having to start grinding them up. I see Apple Avenue now getting new coating on it every 4 to 5 years. They've put regulations in there to, I don't know whether it's to use materials or if they got bad stuff, but the lobbyists have paid so that we make them so they go bad, so that the people that are making the product can sell more stuff, and the people putting the road down gets to put the road down more often. So for them, it's a very good thing. Local control. We don't need all these engineers over there and everybody else. The thing is we have good engineering right out here at our own road commission. They can run this stuff, and they take care of it basically anyway. Just don't send the 100 people that you send. And well, that's way too many chiefs. Local control. If we started sending our money right to the local townships and cities and let them run it, you now have someone to vote out of office if they don't get your road fixed. Right now, we have no one. They blame it on administration. It's just administration. This is what we chose to run it like. I'm saying, if you are on a township board and you don't spend the money correct, I ain't voting for you. That's the way you straighten out a mess.
Thank you. Any rebuttal, colleague?
I would just say part of the package of bills that we did pass had to do with warranties as well. Making sure that when we've got contractors that are putting roads in place, that we actually have a warranty on it. If it breaks or falls apart, they got to come back out and fix it. That was part of the policy that we are also looking to enact.
Holly, any rebuttal?
I think we're clear.
Okay. Alan? All right, thank you.
We're near the end of our program now. We will have closing statements from each of the candidates. In accordance with the coin that was flipped before the debate, Colleen will give the first closing statement.
Thank you. I would just like to say it has been an honor to serve the people here in Muskegon County. I have worked so hard to build the relationships, and I think that's what it is. When being a state representative, it's about building relationships with people. I have been out to the township and city council meetings on a regular basis to give them legislative updates. I've been to businesses across the county, touring manufacturing facilities and talking with them about the issues that they face. And, working with my local chambers of commerce on the things that we need to have move forward here in our state. But more importantly, I've held coffee hours throughout the district, almost 100 coffee hours at this point, allowing people to come and talk to me about their ideas, their concerns, the things that they want to see us work on here in our state. But I don't wait for people to come and talk to me. I go reach out to them. I've knocked on almost 10,000 doors here in our district in the last year. The year before, I knocked on even more doors, calling people up on the phone when the weather was bad and I couldn't get out in the weather. But listening to the people and what they had to say. This is important, folks. We need a representative who is willing to listen to you, willing to work on your issues, someone who understands the things that you're going through and is willing to, bring people together. I consider myself a facilitator. I want to bring people together, to work together, to make our community a better place to live. And that's why I think that I'd like to see your vote on November 4th. Thank you.
Holly, your closing statement?
I've worked hard to achieve results for jobs, seniors, and education. I helped Michigan manufacturers add hundreds of jobs. I started the annual Veterans Job Fair. I fought to keep funding for Meals on Wheels. I passed my legislation to protect seniors from financial abuse. We added more dollars for education. I helped to put the Muskegon Promise Zone legislation in place for college and for vocational education. I'm currently working on expanding preschool with the ISD. The bottom line is this: who got results for Muskegon County and who's continuing to get results? As your state representative, I had 9 bills that were passed into law that made Muskegon stronger and a better place to live. My opponent has not passed a single bill and hasn't even gotten one out of committee. I had great legislation for veterans that my opponent proposed this. It was so great that my opponent proposed the same bill as her own and found out that I'd already gotten it done. It is Michigan law. Voters expect their legislators to cast votes and make the hard choices. 20%, well, 19% of the time, my opponent was unwilling to cast a vote on education, the very issue she's running on in committee. I've made the tough decisions and I'm ready to make them again. I voted to replace the Michigan business tax. We balanced the budget on time, and I voted to lower income taxes for everyone, not just a few. I voted to cut my own pay, cut my office budget twice. The total result has been an increase of 300,000 jobs. My opponent says she wants to cut taxes and spend more. Sounds good. Who wouldn't want to do that? I'd like that. But what she hasn't said is how she's going to pay for it. Is she going to tax you? Is she going to go back to the job-killing business tax where we lost 800,000 jobs in the lost decade? I'm running for state representative because I want our children and our grandchildren to be able to live, work, and grow up here in Muskegon. I'm asking for your vote on November 4th. Thanks again to the Muskegon Chronicle and MCC for hosting this debate. Thank you.
Alan, your closing statement?
I decided in the beginning of this that I would not speak ill of either one of my opponents. And so far I've stuck to this, and I plan on staying stuck to it. I'm even going to go past it. Colleen has worked exceptionally hard to make sure that if you call her office or anything else, you can get information from her. If you don't like the way she votes, that's one thing. But the thing is she is in touch with the people. Ms. Hughes has worked very, very hard with the veterans, and she has a lot to be commended for all that. So I'm not going to speak evil. I don't like all the ads being sent, and it's mostly not by them, it's by these two parties. They are terrible. I mean, we have to work together no matter what happens out of this. Whether they win, I win, whoever, it doesn't matter. You have to work with the parties to get this stuff fixed. And when we run these ads like this, we are just creating this monster that all we're going to do is fight, 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 fight. We're not getting the things done that we got to get done. We have gay rights issues that we should be passing. There are other issues. Marijuana should be legalized. There are issues out there that we could pass real easy. All we have to do is stop and get it done. But because these things are going to happen anyway through the federal government if we don't do it and put the restrictions on them we want. There are a lot of things that we can do. So I'm just a big giant believer in a lot less government, less regulation, and local control. And I will do my best to not raise your taxes, but I am not going to lower your taxes. It just isn't going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for participating tonight, and for those in the audience attending.